Greetings Dragonball fans and welcome to my 500 subscriber special. This What If was put forth by Ariel Shalom, and while there are a ton of Goku versus the Hulk scenarios out there, this seems to be the first What If Goku was the Hulk, or at least like him. So here, the last son of Vegeta, the planet, not the king or his child, is going to share some, but not all of the traits with that big green rage machine from the Marvel Universe. He is still Goku, of course, so there will be no PhDs, nor is this just going to be my version of What If Goku was Broly. He won't be green either in skin tone or hair color, since I'm just going to give him another way to access the Ozaru transformation, albeit in a form that scales more with anger than simply the phases of the moon. When this iteration of Goku gets stressed out, things have a habit of going horribly wrong for everyone on the other end of it. Everyone in the immediate vicinity will probably have a bad day as well. On the plus side, the Hulk is not usually a completely mindless brute like the Lunar Ozaru, and has at least some semblance of friend or foe discrimination. Also, for most of his life, Goku is a fairly happy-go-lucky kind of guy. He's not, always angry, so the juxtaposition of these two extremes will hopefully turn out a good story. We will start this story millions of years ago, where two gravitational behemoths are locked in the final stages of their age-old space-warping dance. When these two neutron stars finally give in to the inevitable, their mind-blowingly stellar kiss births a massive beam of deadly gamma rays that plunges into the depths of space with wanton abandon. When it reaches a star system, some of these rays smash into a planet, disinterestedly doing whatever they can to wipe out any indigenous life they find. However, some of the sprawling structures built by this now long-dead alien civilization manage to reflect the intense waves of gamma radiation, aligning them, polarizing them, and changing them into something a bit more appropriate for our purposes. Sometime later, as Frieza is gleefully watching his planet-cracking death ball do its work within the core of planet Vegeta, a small gravitational shockwave ripples out from the dying world, distorting the very fabric of this universe. This imperceptibly small wave of gravity brushes the edges of our long-lost Gamma Blutz soup as it slips past. While not much by our standards, the slight change in course is enough to put them across the path of a small but rapidly accelerating sphere. As his Saiyan attack pod makes its final course corrections and powers on towards light speed, its lone occupant, the sleeping little Kakarot, doesn't even notice the rays slamming into and through his pod. They angrily bounce around inside a bit until dissipating through the viewing portal, and the pod finally pushes up into the superluminal speeds needed to reach its target before the heat death of the universe. Well, that or Zeno gets bored. As the mutation has yet to develop, Master Gohan's monkey-tailed little discovery has little difference, despite the child's apparent anger, or maybe just aggression. He still gets his head bashed, and still becomes the Goku we know and love, to varying degrees. Likely because of Grandpa's warnings about a wild, fearsome creature that roams the mountain on such nights, little Goku still sneaks out again to get what he thinks is going to be his first view of Earth's full moon. Of course he doesn't encounter the beast himself, but instead wakes up, having once again missed that full moon. He is also unsure of how he got out this far, not to mention what he had decided to do with his clothes, so he quickly makes his way back home through the all-too-familiar forests. Breaking through the tree line to his home, he can't help but see the trail of broken trees and smashed rocks leading away in a slightly different direction. Among those trees he spots a hand poking out through the shattered branches in what looks like a giant footprint. As he cradles his grandpa, little Goku's cry of anguish turns quickly to a roar of anger and rage. He will vaguely remember looking down at the shrinking body in his hands, before roaring again, dropping the remains to beat his chest in frustration and howl at the clear, blue, and utterly indifferent sky. His next memory will be sitting there, staring down at the small, broken body, as it and everything around him starts to grow larger, until his grandpa is once again the size Goku was so familiar with. The small house that they shared is somehow in complete ruin now. Nothing but a low stone dais with shattered wooden posts poking up where the frame once met the now cracked foundation. In the jumble of wood and stone, something orange and shiny glistens in the sun, beckoning to him like his grandpa did at dinner-time. Years later, the barely clothed Goku is set upon by a truly strange forest monster. After overturning the thing, its most recent victim climbs out its ear and starts shouting at him and throwing rocks with frightening speed. While he could not dodge them, they were too small to do anything more than hurt a bit. His growing anger is interrupted when the person stops throwing things at him and starts pointing and shouting and clambering towards what little remains of his grandpa. That orange ball, his grandpa's very soul, must have been knocked out of his bag when that noisy creature had attacked him for his dinner. Bulma introduces herself and he learns about the Dragonballs. She seems nice enough, so he still decides to let her use it, but still wants to collect his grandpa's soul afterwards. They make camp again that next night, and the whole house, TV, bath, and underwear stuff happens as normal, with only one small change. After she recovers from learning that his tail is actually a real tail, Bulma can't help but remark on the sparse line of fur that runs up his back, connecting his jet black tail to his equally black hair. Well, he's always had that, hasn't he? At least, Grandpa never mentioned it. After meeting Turtle and Roshi, Goku gains the flying Nimbus, and they head on to Aru Village. There is a bit of a growl at the axe-wielding father, but things are quickly explained away. They collect Oolong and then head off to meet Yamcha. Fortunately, hunger is not a trigger, nor is being thrown through a rock column or three, possibly due to the distraction of being hungry. When Mushroom City's Monster Carrot holds a recently carroted Bulma hostage and tells the guards to beat on Goku, things go from bad to worse as the fur on his back spreads, and the fuel station is promptly crushed by the hands and feet of a black-furred Ozaru. The villagers all scatter, of course, as the ape smashes the guards, then turns its attention to Monster Carrot himself. Forgetting about his particular power set in the face of this raging monster, the rabbit runs until he is cornered by Yamcha, who threatens to cut off his magic fingers if he doesn't turn Bulma back right now. Their negotiations are interrupted by a crash as the Ozaru lands on a building next to them. In a rumbling cry, the ape roars, "Bad rabbit!" and brings his hands down, splattering the rabbit man into a fine paste. He then stands there, looking down at what remains, and a freshly decorated Yamcha, who isn't moving. The pair stare at each other for what feels like an hour, as Yamcha listens to the sound of his heart throbbing in his ears. When Puar comes up with the carrot that the rabbit man had dropped as he fled, the massive beast reaches towards them for a moment, then rumbles, "Lumpy girl," and slumps down against the remains of a building. A few moments later, it starts to shrink, back down to a normal-sized Goku. Ah, but does he have pants? That's a classic Hulk trope, isn't it? So yeah, he is, inexplicably, still wearing his pants. But Bulma's still a carrot. When they prepare to leave, the townsfolk are weary, but happy to see the back of them. Their town has seen better days, but at least that rabbit guy's gone, and with the little monster leaving, well, they can rebuild. Just take your damn petrol and... the station and everything around it is a burning mess. They find what's left of the hover car, after it had been used as a frisbee by the enlarged Goku, and as luck would have it, the capsules and even the Dragon Radar are safe in their travel case. Fortunately, Bulma must have stuck them in there when she got her new clothes. Unfortunately, that car is completely wrecked. The shop owner practically throws a capsule at them and says just please go, and don't come back. Goku then turns to the awkward-looking Yamcha and asks if he wants to help fix Bulma, and oh boy, does he. Yamcha awkwardly scratches his head. It's not like we've got anything better to do right now, eh, Puar? You fancy helping them out a bit? Are you sure, Lord Yamcha? The hovercat asks, peering out from behind him at the blissfully ignorant Goku. Yeah, he says finally, more sure of himself. We'll help, okay, Puar? They are, of course, attacked by Sho again, and the balls are taken, but not the radar. That was relatively safe in the pouch with Goku's 4-star ball. Is Goku upset about the attack? He might have been, but was far too distracted to focus on the anger. Something not entirely lost on Yamcha. That's twice he's been attacked and hasn't changed, isn't it? After they are captured and gassed, Yamcha asks Goku if he's angry about it, but he's not. All those traps and stuff were kind of fun. A small Kamehameha later, and Bat, Puar, and Oolong leave, with Goku and Yamcha shouting after them to remember the wish. Pilaf is both irritated and confused when the cat calls out something about making a carrot normal. Bulma then returns to her normal self in Yamcha's arms, but they are all trapped again for the evening. This time there is little prompting for Goku to tell them the story of the giant monster that roams the mountains. Who could that have been? They ask sarcastically. And they break it down for Goku, who, up until this point, wasn't entirely aware that he was that monster. Yamcha says that actually that could come in handy right now. He could use it to smash through the... Goku? Goku has of course just learned that it was him, He had been the one that killed his grandpa. The sadness and subsequent anger at himself prove more than sufficient. He cries a bit, but as the anger strikes, he looks up into the night sky, where, just as expected, a full moon hangs. The Uzaru that spawns from this has none of the focus of the one that wrecked Mushroom City. It is a wild beast with no target at all save for what pokes at it. Left with no other option, as this black-furred ape shows no signs of calming down, they resort to cutting its tail off. With the loss of the balls and his tail, Goku thanks them for their help with rescuing Bulma and his, little outburst, and he heads off to train with Master Roshi, while Bulma takes her savior off to West City to try and civilize him. I'm sure Oolong will lament the lack of underwear, but is genuinely pleased with the outcome. That Goku guy should be a bit more normal now that his tail is gone. Goku then arrives to train with Master Roshi, and while Krillin's little trick with the stone is annoying, it's not exactly anger-inducing. When his tail regrows during the match with Jiren, however, he's initially happy to have it back, especially with the strength it grants. Then, after Jiren forfeits, Goku is left to stare at it for a moment, with a sidelong glance to Bulma and the equally wide-eyed Yamcha. In his next match against Namu, Goku is noticeably off his game as he holds back, wanting to avoid the feeling that he remembered from the desert. When Namu eventually lands directly on him, Goku is left panting and growling, with a hint of black fur on his arms. Seeing this, Yamcha and Bulma run up to the arena, calling out to him, distracting him from both his anger and Namu's next attack. Goku is knocked out of the ring and is out of the tournament. Roshi goes on to not only win the tournament, but also learn about Goku's tail and the circumstances of Gohan's death. So the boy needs to control his emotions, does he? Well, there might be a way to do that, but it's not without its perils. With the new goal in mind, Goku opts to have his tail cut off again, despite the loss in strength. Roshi and his pupils, Goku, the bewildered Krillin, and now Yamcha as well, head straight towards the land of Korin, with Bulma at the controls. They arrive at Korin's tower, and Goku is thrilled to see that Bora and Upa have the 4-star ball. After explaining things to them, they hand it over without much fuss. Roshi then says that he and Goku will climb the tower and meet the cat hermit, as he may know how to help. Krillin and Yamcha, of course, take it as a personal challenge to climb as well. As they prepare for their 4th attempt, Colonel Yellow arrives and starts making demands. When he is dealt with, they begin their climb again. Halfway up this time, they are passed by a strange climbing contraption that looks a bit like their plane. When they eventually reach the top, they find the cat, who was expecting them, along with the pilot of that spidery mech, Bulma. Korin had of course seen her reasons and that she was not after any training, so is willing to forgive her, kind of cheating. She has bad news, though. It seems Colonel Yellow had reported in before his untimely demise at Bora's hands, and the Red Ribbon had sent an assassin of the highest caliber to retrieve that last ball that they need. Tao Pai Pai had already made several attempts to scale the tower, which Krillin and Yamcha had actually seen as various tree trunks flew up and down, but they hadn't thought much of it. The tower was weird enough already. Tao had then tried to knock the tower down, but even his Dodonpa barely scratched the mystical thing. So he had flown off to get some better equipment. This was when Bulma had cobbled together the remains of their and the Red Ribbon's equipment into a climbing mech to try and warm Goku and Roshi. Korin says that if they want to meet those two, they have a lot more climbing to do. Fortunately, having wasted no time in frivolous chit-chat, Roshi and Goku had started their initial climb almost immediately. Goku had thus not discarded the power pole before scaling the initial tower with his master. He had in fact also passed Korin's test, which left Roshi suitably shocked. However, there is no point in warning them. The Guardian of Earth can see it all anyway. Why do you think that Tao guy couldn't even reach this relatively low level? So how about they start working on his trials instead? With Bulma watching Yamcha's and Krillin's attempts to catch the cat, we will bring Part 1 to a close. Things are suitably off the beaten track this time round, as Goku seeks a solution to that which took his grandpa away from him. Will Yamcha and Krillin be able to sample the mystic water? How do you think Roshi and Goku are faring on their way up to Kami's lookout? Find out next time on Dragonball. What if Goku was like the Hulk?